Former churchgoers say there's little that's Christ-like about this Carolina congregation. Last February, we broke the story of the Word of Faith Fellowship, where those who don't toe the church line say they're abused. Well, now authorities are investigating, and our Steve Wilson has uncovered more abuse and serious questions about a death inside the church.
Praise the Lord, hallelujah, praise the name of the Lord.
Darren Lloyd wants to know why his father's death was cause for this glorious celebration. After suffering a massive heart attack, Harold Lloyd died in the arms of his son, who is still plenty bitter about how his father was treated at the Word of Faith Church here in Spindale, North Carolina.
The 4 people that I've talked to, they've agreed to sign affidavits saying that they witnessed for 2 weeks prior to his death that medication was withheld from him.
And when his father collapsed at a family dinner, Darren and his wife, who are not involved with the church, tried desperately to save him. As for his mother, sister, and another church member,
what were they doing while he was sitting there?
Yelling for the demons to get out of him.
They were blasting.
They were blasting him.
That's what's called blasting him. They're just blasting him.
This blasting is the same bizarre practice we first exposed inside this secretive religious sect earlier this year. For an hour and 26 minutes, this is what they did to help Harold. And instead of calling an ambulance to save him,
they're calling church members. I didn't know it because I'm trying to give my dad mouth to mouth. And I'm trying to get him living, you know. He's sitting there dying, he's purple. And so I started yelling at Mom and says, you know, give him his medicine, get him his medicine, he needs his medicine. And they started just yelling for demons to get at him. They're screaming and hollering, you know, I loose you, Satan, get out of you evil spirits. And they're just screaming at him.
We showed you last time how psychologists say this kind of screaming at children clearly amounts to abuse. But did Harold Lloyd die for his devotion to the Word of Faith?
Sickness and death is of the devil, according to the church. To go to medical help, and it's the last resort. You know, whoa, our blasting didn't work. This dude's dying. Guess we better go ahead and call the ambulance.
We say every accusation has been entirely true. Entirely untrue. No truth in it whatsoever.
She's Jane Whaley, the woman who really leads the 300 adults and children at the Word of Faith, and she has broken her usual code of silence just long enough to do some public blasting of us for exposing what's been going on here. If you missed it, we showed you in February how we worked with the Dallas-based Trinity Foundation to investigate this sect for 4 months and used hidden cameras to document some of what we found. In addition to the blasting, we heard eyewitness reports of babies being tied inside the church nursery and older children being beaten and punched. We documented evidence this parishioner was involved in illicit sex with a young church girl. Mrs. Whaley admitted she hushed it up, along with at least one other such case. We showed you how parishioners are told where to live, where to work, even how and what to think. A consistent pattern of the kind of extreme control experts associate with dangerous cults. And church leaders, we showed you how parishioners crowd into group homes while they help pay for the perks that allow the pastors to live like royalty.
These accusations are entirely untrue and were created to enhance a sensational and a very emotional story.
Well, state and local authorities were not convinced. A few days later, they announced a full investigation.
I and the district attorney jointly have requested the SBI to initiate an investigation to determine what, if any, criminal conduct may have occurred by individuals connected with the Word of Faith Fellowship.
Good afternoon. You're live on the air.
Yes, I'd like to say thank you to Inside Edition and all they've done for our county.
Citizens throughout North Carolina have also responded with concern and information that's helped our investigation continue.
There can't be a church or any place like that that cannot be investigated somehow or another.
And since our initial report, we've confirmed the Word of Faith in Spindale is only the mother church for a whole string of related congregations, like the New Jerusalem Outreach here on North Carolina's Eastern Shore.
I've seen the people throwing up in the dishpans, people being restrained, held down, people just become violent and have to be like 5 and 6 grown men holding women down.
And all of this after the Whaleys came
into your church.
Right. It did not start until the Whaleys came.
When Jane Whaley and her husband Sam there formed an alliance with two churches near Wilmington, North Carolina, these folks say they got an eyeful of the exact same kind of things we uncovered 300 miles away in Spindale.
I've seen adults come in with black eyes. I've seen adults come in with injuries on their arms.
I have a young grandson that was in this ministry, and I could see things that began to happen.
Yvonne Bright says she noticed a distinct change in little Caleb's behavior when she left him with a babysitter at the church.
And then the babysitter finally left the church, and she told us that he had been blasted and that I was right at these times, that I knew that something had happened to him.
And Caleb was how old?
1.5 years old, approximately.
I've seen even the smaller infants blasted.
Infants?
Infants.
So, just why do people come to a church like this?
I was looking for acceptance, love, kindness.
But Tammy Jacobs and her 15-year-old daughter Naomi say that's not what they found inside the home of a church leader where they and a number of other followers were housed.
They hit me.
Who hit you?
The guy that we lived with, Glenn Webb.
Did I talk to you about Tammy and Naomi? They say that
They're at the front door out.
Glenn Webb refused to say a word about how he allegedly blasted and beat young children, even babies, at the church, and repeatedly took a wooden paddle to Naomi, her mother, and another young woman who Tammy says she saw Webb beat.
But I constantly saw them grabbing her and hitting her, or with the paddle up and down her legs, on her arms, and her stomach.
I didn't talk to my mom when they told me not to, I'd go out and I'd pretend that they were my parents and my family.
When I would walk in the room, they would say, Naomi, don't talk to your mother, she's operating out of devils. And so Naomi would never listen to me.
I would think instead of standing there with your fingers in your mouth, staring off in the distance, you'd want to speak up, because this is your chance.
Webb refused to speak a word, and as for church pastor Buddy Dawson, who is said to lead such abusive behavior in the name of God,
Can I talk to you for a second, sir?
he wasn't eager to make any statements either.
Some folks have made some pretty serious charges about you in the church, about how you've been treating some of the children.
Cornered by a local reporter earlier, the good reverend seemed genuinely perplexed about blasting babies or anyone else.
I don't know anything about blasting or shouting. You have to explain.
And it's something that he strongly believes in that church.
Former church member Jill Harris's eyes were opened when she says she watched her pastor lie on television. She's now left his New Jerusalem outreach, but with its close ties to Jane Whaley and the Mother Church in Spindale, it's expanding and not far away.
I spent 6 years of my life here in this church, and you're telling me that I can't come in.
So we're about to ask you to stop.
If you come in, you will be breaking the law.
Whaley supporters have taken control of another church where only devotees are now welcome.
This is not a small fragment of religious people. They are highly organized. They may very well be the most organized international cult that exists today.
And here's evidence he may be right about how far the sect has spread. There's Jane Whaley preaching to supporters at an affiliated church in Sweden.
We've got another Waco situation getting ready to happen. Apparently, someone is going to have to die. We're going to have a Waco incident before anyone is going to act.
The Department of Social Services has removed at least one child from the Word of Faith Fellowship, and the state continues its investigation. Meantime, there's news the Word of Faith is also operating in neighboring South Carolina, as well as several other states around the country.